Hello, everybody. So we are going to start the second chapter in this course, which is chapter number 3, with the title Processes and Process Variables. And as I mentioned before, we are not going to cover the whole chapter. We are just covering the first part of this chapter, which is the most important for us, and which covers the main concepts that we will be using in the next chapter and in the rest of the course and the coming courses, inshallah. So for this chapter, the main objectives that we want to achieve is to learn the meaning of a process and the components of a process. This is a very commonly used word in chemical engineering, which is the word process. So we will be talking about this word in details. We will understand what are the components, how can we define it, and later we will be talking about the difference between quantities and rates, which is a very important thing. Then how to convert quantities from mass to volume to moles, and understand the meaning and importance of composition. If you're not familiar with this word, we're going to talk about this in details later, and how we can express this composition and how we can convert a composition from one unit to another, which is also a very important thing. This chapter is similar to the previous in the sense of covering very essential and basic concepts, and these concepts are going to be very essential in all chemical engineering courses and applications later. So you need to deal with this as a basic skill that you need to acquire and master. So it's like addition and subtraction for us. No chemical engineer can be a good chemical engineer without understanding these concepts well. So this is something I want you to keep in mind while covering this chapter. Okay, so now let's start with talking about the word process. So a process is defined as an operation or series of operations that accomplish a particular objective. So you have something that you want to produce, and you create a process, or a process consists of many steps, aims at achieving this or accomplishing this objective. This operation can be physical or chemical, meaning that the operation can change the physical shape of or the physical composition, or I don't know the right word, but how the material or the consistency of the material. So it can change it from, let's say, from big solid to small solids. It can change it from liquid to solid, from solid to gas. Whatever the change that it does, it just changes the physical state of the material, but it doesn't change the chemical composition. So if it doesn't include any chemical change in the composition or the chemical structure, then it's called a physical process. If the process involves change in the chemical structure, then we call it a chemical process. This is important because in chapter 4 we will be dealing with physical systems and chemical systems, and the way we deal with chemical systems is different from dealing with physical systems, so you have to be familiar with this difference. The process takes or requires a feed that is fed to or enters the process, and the process changes this input to produce the product. The input to the process, we call it a feed, and the output, we call it a product. And it's very common that a process will consist of more than one step, and that each step is doing part of the whole objective. So the input goes to the first step, then the next, then the next, then the next. So to make it clear, let's take a very simple and very popular example that would make things much clearer. I know what I said might not be very clear, so I'll talk about the example and then I'll revisit what I just mentioned here again. So the example that we are going to discuss is baking a cake. So it's a very simple process. we said that the process is an operation or series of operation that accomplishes a particular objective. So the objective is to bake a cake. So this is the objective. In this case, we have chemical changes because we start with different materials, and the product is something with totally different chemical composition. So this is a chemical process. Here we have input to the process. The input is the milk, the egg, the oil, the lemon, the wheat, whatever we put, it's called the feed or the input to the process. And then we have multiple steps. These multiple steps include mixing the ingredients and pouring the mixed ingredients into the pan, the cooking pan, and then baking the cake in the oven, and then making the icing or the topping, and then putting the icing or the topping on the cake and decorating it. So all of these are steps. Each one of them requires one input from the previous step. So here we have these inputs go here, then the product from here goes here, then the product from here goes here, and so on. So this is multiple steps, and each one of them is achieving part of the total or the main goal of the process. And finally we have the product, which is the cake. This is the product or the output. So this is a very, very simple example of a process, and usually from my experience with the students, that this makes things very, very clear for them to understand what this we said here means. So I hope the idea is clear. Of course, in the chemical engineering processes or applications, the processes are not that simple, and the processes include more complicated steps, and more steps as a number of steps, and it's not a very fancy drawing like this. So what we're going to look at now is a process of crude oil fractionation. And this process is a very famous process where we, or the crude oil, which we extract from the wells, is, and this crude oil is a mixture of many things. So the goal of this process, or the objective that we want to achieve, is to separate the components of the crude oil. So we can produce light gases, we can produce oils, we can produce fuels for like gasoline, kerosene, and other and jet fuels and other things. There are many things that we can produce from the fractionation process. So before I show you the process, I just want to give you a heads up that you most probably will not understand what's going on here in this figure. I just want you to be familiar with this kind of diagrams, because we are going to deal with these kind of diagrams a lot in this course and in your life later, inshallah, after you graduate. So this is what we see. So again, to make you feel good about yourself, I'm not expecting you to understand what is here, but I just want to focus on the three main components of the process: the input, the process itself, and the output. So here we have crude oil fractionation. So the feed is crude oil. So this is the input to the process. There are many things here. There are heaters, there are distillation columns, there are desalter, there are many things, pumps, compressors. So don't worry about all of these. You will study them all in prospective courses later, in heat transfer, fluid mechanics, and mass transfer later, and reaction engineering courses. All of these things are going to be covered later. But for now, let's consider these as a group of steps or stages where the feed is, or the input is passing by one until it produces the output. So this is the process, and the final output is or are all of these. It's we said we have gas, we have some water, naphtha, kerosene, light oil, heavy oil, many things here. So this is a process. Okay, so just the take-home message of this, that this is a process. When you look at a process, you have to be thinking of the three components: the input, the output, and the steps that take place inside the process. So this is what I want to mention here. One more term that I want to discuss here is the process variable. A process variable is a term that we are going to use a lot. We call it sometimes process variable, process value, or process parameter, and we mean by this the parameters that we can measure or control in a particular process. And let's take the example of the cake. The process variables are like the ingredients, how many or how much of the ingredients are being used. If you can control this, you can add 1 egg or 5 eggs. You can add 1 cup of milk or 10 cups of milk. It's your call. So you can change it as much as you can, and of course this will have a very big impact on the product. If you put wrong amount, then it's gonna produce something that is not good enough, or it will ruin the whole thing. You can control the temperature of the oven. You can control how much time you put the cake in the oven. All of these are parameters that affect the process, and you have a control on these parameters. You can measure them or you can control them. For the chemical engineering applications, the variables include the masses and volumes, or the flow rates. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I'm going to discuss the difference between these two in details in the next video. The compositions or the concentrations, the pressures, the temperature, these are all variables that we discuss. One last thing to mention here about the process variables is that the variables depend on or there are two types of variables. To understand the difference between the two types, let's look at this process. It's a very simple process. We have this arrow, we call it a stream. This shows that there are components going from one place to another. So this is the feed going into this reactor. It says reactor here, where a reaction takes place producing ethyl benzene, and then the product goes in this stream into a separator, separating the components into two different streams. So we have here blocks and we have streams. The stream is the arrow that represents the components going from one place to another, and the block is part of the process where something is taking place, either reaction, separation, cooling, heating, whatever the process that we have, it is going to be in one of these blocks. So for the process variables, we have process variables that are related to stream, like the composition, the flow rate, the temperature and pressure, and there are variables that are related to the blocks, like the temperature and the pressure. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, because we will be talking about these a lot in the coming chapter and in the energy balance part as well. So what we're going to start with next time is talking about the process variables, and we will focus on the composition one, and the flow rate and the composition. So this is going to be the topic of the next video and the coming videos, inshallah. So I'll see you then. Goodbye.